go ahead and start with a roll call. We have a couple of people out today.
Hey, Mrs. Zimmerman is not here. Mrs. Fortney? Here. Mr. Pence?
Here.
Mrs. Straight? Dr. Royer?
Here.
Mr. Marvin?
Here.
Mr. Hamburger?
Here.
Mrs. Miles?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Present. Okay. So first item of business here is the approval of tonight's agenda. Do we have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And then we move to the approval of minutes from our previous meeting. That was on March 12th. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and we now move to our superintendent's report. Dr. Sternenheim will be joining us via Zoom. Dr.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
All right. So first of all, I want to offer huge congratulations to WASH's for an outstanding performance of Into the Woods. Also want to recognize we had 26 WASH's learners earn Science Olympiad medals, and the middle school is actually going to state. So big congratulations to those students. April 3rd is our ACT 80 day, but it's also an in-service day. We are going to be pursuing the elementary math program, Leader in Me, as well as some ACT 55 training. And also April 8th is the early dismissal day for the solar eclipse event. Ironically, PDE just came out this week with information somewhat suggesting that school districts should at least consider an early dismissal in light of the solar eclipse. So a big thank you to the board for very early on recognizing that this had the potential to be a great community event, and I appreciate your support. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Sternheim. Let's move to, do we have public comment tonight? Anyone?
Wasn't given anything.
Okay, thank you. And student board report, and Alexis will present tonight. She's solo tonight.
Just to kind of go into what Dr. Sternheim said about the solar eclipse, on April 8th from 2 to 4 p.m., the Waynesboro Area School District will be hosting a solar eclipse watch party with expert guidance from NASA scientist Todd Toth. We also have a new art teacher at the high school, I'm pretty sure, Miss Gaglardio. Not sure how you pronounce that. Also, we had the Tim Cook Invitational track meet that was held at Chambersburg High School this past Saturday, and I've heard that they all performed very well. And big congratulations to Lexi, Anna Oslick, and George Beach for getting top 3 in the 4-way Rotary speech contest. And I think they will be going over to the country club later and then also hosting another speech event. And then I think from there they go to states. But other than that, I think that's everything I have. And then also spring break is coming up too, which is exciting for, I think, everybody.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. We move to board reports. Anything from policy committee?
We have not met since our next meeting is going to be April 4th.
Okay, academic.
Academic meeting is going to be April. We have not met since.
Okay, thank you. Facilities.
Facilities met last week. Our next meeting will be on the April 16th. A couple of things, just the make sure everyone's aware. Thanks to the generosity of a lot of community partners, the Fairview Playground has been fully funded. Kind of what the next step then is, we as the district will be paying for the installation of the equipment now. So we're in the process of applying for is an accessibility across the district grant. One of the things to note is that there is a $500,000 minimum on that. So we're looking at accessibility across the 4 elementary schools, plus the middle school as well, in order to meet that minimum threshold. Just to kind of, as we think about, we're starting to actually plan for next summer for some work that we're planning to do. That work is probably around $1.5 million. Another thing we're exploring is updates to our middle school gym. And so we're planning to have our engineers and architects come in and just kind of just do a blanket evaluation of what is needed in the middle school gym. So we haven't approved or done anything with the middle school gym yet. We're just kind of seeing what needs to be done. Thanks to Mrs. States, we did get a grant for washers and dryers across the district. The help with students and homelessness and their families being able to wash their clothes. There is still a lot to do with that. Even though we have approval of the grant, we still need to identify areas, machines, logistics of what that would all entail. But thanks to the work of Ms. States and her team for doing that. And then I think the last thing is we are also waiting on getting bid specs back on the North Bridge. This is the saga that never ends. We finally have approval to do the work, but now we need to put the specs together to have the work put out the bid, to have it actually done, hopefully this summer. So more to come on that at the next meeting. And then budget did not meet this past time, but next on the agenda, Dr. Holtzman's going to kind of give a budget update because next board meeting, the 9th, we are going to vote on the preliminary budget. And I won't steal too much of Dr. Holtzman's thunder on that piece there. But as a reminder, we will be at the high school, I believe, for that meeting for winter sport athletes recognition and other recognitions from the winter piece. But that is kind of the preliminary budget we will vote at next board meeting. So Dr. Holden's going to give that presentation next.
Thank you. And that is next, the budget, WASD budget update, and then K-5 math recommendation.
So what we like to always remind everyone is while we're talking about a budget right now. See if I'm close enough. So we talk about a budget, but this isn't something that happens real quick. So we start doing the budget process realistically back in. Trying to get this to. Was advancing. I do. Lights on. Yeah. Well. All right, perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it. So we're working on the budget typically starting in September, October of last year. So this is a budget we have to approve by June 30th, but we're really working on this for about 9 months. Budget committee has met several times, going back into October timeframe. Sometimes they've started in September, depends on the year. Tonight we have a presentation. We have a budget committee coming up next month. We have the board meeting who has a proposed final budget. So that starts the clock. We have to have that proposed final budget approved before we can ever approve a final budget. It has to be 30 days in between minimum. And then you have to advertise that proposed final budget as well. So the budget can change, or it can actually change between the proposed and the final budget itself. So we don't have some of the same rules that other organizations do when it comes to that. We actually put this in here. I think this, Dr. Roy, this might have been a recommendation of yours. So not all of the acronyms are going to be in your presentation, but it's a great idea. We use acronyms way too much in schools. So we try to put this in here really as just kind of a help as we're working through here. So that's really that reference. So the current state of the budget, and again, this fluctuates on a regular basis. And I apologize if you notice in your handouts, I flipped expenditures and revenues in terms of the name, not the dollar amounts. So thanks, Mr. Hamburger, for picking up on that. So expenditures are $80 million, revenues are 77. Obviously, that's a deficit at this point. But again, we're still working through the process. $800,000 of that really, though, is actually coming from one-time capital funds. So realistically, the deficit is not 2.7, but we'll talk about how to address that here shortly. So right now, this reflects all of our different educational opportunities for students. It also reflects building projects that we have to do. And then we also, again, as mentioned, we can look at the deficit from different perspectives. Sometimes people ask, well, what is in the budget? Well, this is really just one type of a snapshot. We look at this from a object perspective. As you'll see, salaries and benefits are about almost 75% of our budget. If you put bond principal up there, you're talking about 80% now. Other purchase services looks very large. In fact, ours is always going to be larger than most school districts because we have Abraxas money that flows through there. But also that includes your cyber charter expenses, transportation expenses, career tech center. Those are all in that other purchase services. Supply line, I know we always have questions about how much are you spending on supplies. So it's 2.6% of our budget at the end of the day. This is just a little bit more description of what are in those line items. Again, very top level, but just to give you a kind of a point of reference. Revenues, unfortunately, our local community has to share the majority of our expenses here for the school district. I say this and I bring this up several times throughout the presentation. We're in the bottom 1 to 2% of all school districts on current spending. So the fact that the state should realistically be much higher than what you see here, but that's the situation we have. Oh, sorry, Mr. Cornell, but there it goes. So what are driving some of the expense increases year over year? Now, these are year over year budgetary expenditure changes. So again, salaries are going up. A lot of our salaries are agreements and contracts that we have to meet. Same thing with our insurance, Social Security, the pension system. Those are all obligations. Some are in and out. So Abraxas is really an in and out. We receive the revenue in, but it goes right back out to Abraxas. Capital projects, of course, we've talked about, and transportation costs. Transportation costs go up based on an index that we use, the state index. That's reflecting what you're seeing there as well. The index is actually just a hair higher than that, so there's a little bit of savings in there, but not much.
Let me pause real quick
Yes, sir.
there. So just to point out for the rest of the board, I think outside of maybe capital projects, all of the costs you see up there are hard costs. Like those aren't things that we as a district have much say in. So those are things those are the increases that we will see. Other than the capital projects, that's something we are deciding to do. So I just, for the board and the public, kind of as we see those expenditures rising, those rising expenditures are stuff that's kind of outside of our control as a district.
I appreciate it, Mr. Martin. You're correct. Yep. And we did this before at another point. There's probably some old presentations out there. We talked a lot about controllable and uncontrollable expenses. And again, for when you're in the situation where we're at because of state funding, a lot of our situations are very difficult to address from an inflationary perspective. There's districts out there that have significantly more staff per student. So if they have a retirement, they can say, well, we might not need to replace the position. We're not quite in that situation, unfortunately. We do have some additional.
Question, Dr.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Holcomb?
Yes, sir, Mr.
Just,
Smith.
where does other purchase services fit into those categories? Which category would that
Some of
be?
the items that would come out of there would be transportation, career tech, and Abraxas. Yep.
Eric, can you explain the almost 1-to-1 ratio between salaries and medical insurance?
Sure. So medical insurance is going up significantly. We're self-insured. We're
Shop there, yes.
if that's the direction you're asking for. Yeah, we're in a trust. We're self-insured. Our medical insurance costs have been going up dramatically. It's unfortunate from a claims perspective of what we're seeing. Typically, probably about 1%, and this is not unusual for most of the districts in the trust. About 1%, maybe 2% of your covered employees and dependents are driving probably about 40% or more of your cost. So, there's no caps anymore on medical insurance. There used to be caps before the Affordable Care Act. Now there are not. So, and not theoretically, but practically speaking, you can have a person in a given year who incurs, $500,000 of healthcare costs, and the next year incurs another $500,000 in healthcare costs, and that can continue. Unfortunately, again, it's a very difficult situation, but that's really what's driving our medical insurance costs. Now, we do have stop loss insurance. So once we get to a certain point, we do have coverage that comes in, but you're still paying for that over the
You
long
gotta pay
haul.
for that sooner or later.
Right. Yeah, by being self-insured, what we've theoretically eliminated a little bit is we've eliminated that kind of profit margin of being fully insured.
Just for a ballpark figure, what did it cost us to insure a family?
Ballpark, right now, I think it's about 25 or 26,000, and I think it's going up to about 28, 29,000. So, and while those numbers are quite high, obviously, it's interesting. If you talk to school districts on the eastern part of the state, you'll find districts over there that are paying $40,000 and $50,000.
Mhm.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to point out, medical insurance kills you.
It's very expensive. Between that and the pension, it used to be the pension was the highest of the two, but now we're starting to see medical insurance surpassing the pension costs. Yeah, for a new employee, like for example, a new employee with benefits, typically our cost for benefits will oftentimes exceed the salary. So when you add all the different benefits together. Again, we're continuing to review items. Some things in our programs are revenue neutral. For example, Abraxas's money coming to the district, but going back out. Some of our grants are coming to the district, but going out to pre-K and things of that nature. So, arguably those are things that again, uncontrollables, you can't really change. If you reduced the expenditures, you'd have to reduce the revenues as well. So again, a little bit more information on uncontrollables. I think we've broached these a couple times in the past. I think we've already hit on a few of those as well. Again, special ed is special ed. We have to address those. The pension is a requirement under the Pennsylvania system. Our bonds and capital projects, the bonds certainly are not negotiable. You could talk about capital projects, but again, ultimately you do have to make repairs to your buildings. Transportation, of course, theoretically, you don't have to provide transportation to students in Pennsylvania, but practically speaking, it would be a challenge to get students to school, meet attendance, and educational opportunities. So revenues, there are some revenues that are increasing, which is good news. Right now, though, that current real estate revenue is increasing from two things. One is natural growth, additional buildings, properties in the district, but it's also with a 4.1% increase right now in that budget at this point. That 4.1% equates to about 4.5 mils. Earned income tax has been increasing dramatically. That's a positive for us. That's helping us out. Investment earnings, that's just the increase. That's not the total we're getting. Now, when you see the FICA and when you see the pension at the bottom there, what that means is we receive a portion of reimbursement of our Social Security and of our pension costs. Not all of them, but a portion from the state. So, and they're varying portions, by the way. That's one of the reasons why the numbers look a little different and unique. But some of that changes a little bit from back and forth. State funding, again, that could change based on the final approved budget from the state. We're still waiting for that information. We're not assuming any major economic changes next year. So balancing the budget, obviously there's lots of different ways you could look at balancing a budget. I mean, these are just examples that we've put up here. Again, fair funding from the state would solve a lot of our problems, which you'll see on the next slide here. Using some of your fund balance could be a potential solution as well. So we have a deficit, but we did mention earlier that $800,000 of that is coming from our capital fund. That's for projects. So it's one-time money for one-time events and one-time projects. So think asbestos mitigation, North Bridge, roof for the career tech. So realistically, your deficit is $2.1 million. So how do we address that? Well, we have a couple options. I mean, there's certainly other options we could look at, but these are the three that come to mind here. You could go to the Act 1 index, which is an inflationary index. So if you raise that Act 1 index up to the top, which is 7.4%, that would generate an additional $1 million or a portion of that. If the state were to fund us according to what the court case said, and according to what the Basic Ed Funding Commission said, in addition to what I already have in the budget, I'd receive another $3.2 million of revenue. I mean, that would be tremendous if we were to receive that. If we were to receive 1/3 of that or 2/3 of that, that would go a long way to balancing the budget. And then, of course, unassigned fund balance, you could use a portion of that as well. Certainly, it could be a combination of those options. Using unassigned fund balance for 1 year, probably not a bad idea, maybe not that full amount of $2 million. If you try to use that for multiple years, you can create a fiscal cliff. We always want to stay away from fiscal cliffs. Eventually, your savings account does run out. And then we also need to prepare. We have curriculum changes we're looking at as well as accessibility projects into next year. So from a tax perspective, we'd like to try to compare some things here a little bit. Median household income, according to the state for our school district, was $65,000. So if you're paying state income tax, you're paying about $2,000. The market value, now this is market value, not assessed value, of a homestead property for 23 was $217,000, and they're paying about $2,048 on their taxes. So it's about 1% of the home's value. So just a hair below, but approximately 1%. So again, there's districts out there that you're paying 2% or more of the home's value just for school tax. That would require us to literally double our mill rate if we wanted to try to get up to that point, which we can, of course, but nonetheless, just as a comparison. So again, in summary, the school district has a lot of challenges. The fair funding is probably the largest challenge at the end of the day, receiving that fair funding from the state. Our mill rate is lower than the Act One index over the long haul since 2006. Again, we're trying to be competitive with salaries and with benefits for our employees because obviously it's a little bit harder to hire teachers now than it was when you think about this 5 or 10 years ago. One of the issues we do run into is we have the least amount of assessed property per student, so that makes it a little bit of a challenge when we do raise properties. And then as well as our market value aid ratio. The higher that number is not necessarily a good trend, but that is a higher number than the rest of the county. And again, I always like to throw it out there, the Basic Ed Funding Commission has said that we are underfunded by about $25 million. That's per year. So if you think about that, we increase our budget by about 30%. So somewhere in that ballpark. So you can imagine the goal from the Basic Ed Funding Commission and the proposed budget was to resolve that problem over 7 years. Will that happen? Well, we don't know. Most years, you're probably going to pass a budget before the state passes theirs because they historically don't pass their budget by June 30th. And then that's all. That's the end of the presentation. And I think Dr. DeShong, I think, had a piece on curriculum as well after whatever questions you might have for him.
Questions? Dr. Holzman?
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Sorry.
Well
It's
done.
not the best news, but it's not, there's a plan, so. Or options, I should say. I shouldn't say a plan. There's really options.
Thanks, Dr. Holtzman. Appreciate it. So I laid a handout in front of everybody's seat there. So I want to start out by basically saying too, this piece of paper is about over a year's work. It's narrowed down to this
Mhm.
piece of paper right here on the front and the back.
Mm.
We actually had a meeting earlier around 3:45 today with our Minds on Math team as well as our grade level coordinators to kind of give that final voice and say we polled our teachers, checked in with our teachers, and again, it's been an ongoing process. And again, it comes down to this piece of paper here with the two programs that we have made the championship round here. Where are we at now with the NCAA now? We at the Sweet 16? Sweet 16, so we're beyond the Sweet 16. We're actually in the final right now, so we are at iReady and Bridges, the team and all the hard works. Our recommendation is to move forward with iReady, which would be something on the agenda for our next meeting. But to look at especially the table in the back here, the narrative side, it has kind of a lot of all the various variables included, but just looking at just flat, kind of like from year to year, you can see what the programs kind of balance out to be. Even the Bridges cost there at the initial cost, you could knock off 43,000 on that. If we didn't include the intervention, would put us around 200,000. The iReady's 127.50. If we get some manipulatives involved in that, it could be anywhere from 10 to 30, but we're going to do an inventory on manipulatives. And then the right column is kind of where we're at with everyday math. So to sustain or maintain everyday math from year to year, it's approximately just a touch over 50,000. But with that also comes the cost of Acadian's math diagnostic or assessment, as well as Study Island, which if we go with iReady, that'll be something that we won't be spending on down the road. But there again, you can see like as we move forward from a year to year perspective and what the difference is from the current budget per year. So the other additional cost to throw in on Bridges could potentially be $22,000 for a digital assessment tool, which is not included in that cost. So again, a lot of variables, which you can kind of look at in the backside, but just kind of like on the table here, you can kind of see kind of like straight kind of figures. But I can certainly answer any questions moving forward between now and the next meeting. We don't have a academic committee meeting until the 16th. But I know last time around, we did present to the academic committee meeting, as well as the last meeting, we had a board presentation too on Bridges and iReady and kind of our journey that we've taken over the past little over a year. So does anybody have any questions, right now? Just again, and if something comes up between now and the next meeting, please feel free to, reach out and we can certainly clear anything up. So.
Well, it appears to me that the bridges just has a little bit larger upfront cost.
Yeah, upfront, Mr. Hamburger. So again, if we don't go with the intervention component, it's approximately 200,000. And then. from-
Okay, I gotta ask, what's an intervention component?
So the intervention component for bridges, it actually is, it's tailored to meet those students where they're not up or where they might be coming up short or whatever. So
Okay.
we would have an intervention. It could also be included in special ed too, to help provide those supports. iReady has, kind of a computer, they have a diagnostic as well as, they call it the path, which ties into the core resource, which you can assign students to various pieces, where it's geometry, whether it's algebraic, equations, numbers and operations, those type of things. You can actually tailor it to the students with the iReady path they have.
And
Dr.
it-
Roy, I'm sorry.
Isn't it cost, what's included as it relates to staff development?
So,
work.
in those initial costs, Mr. Smith, thanks for asking that. In the initial cost, that's covered. So they kind of bake that into the cost up front for your first year. So we would get, I think 3 to 4 professional, learning visits from each of those companies. So down the road, those would be additional cost, and they're variable. So that could vary from, like, let's say next year, we want to have 2 visits, 3 visits, 4 visits. Obviously, there's more cost if you did from 2 to 4 visits. So in both of them, that would be an additional cost as you move forward. So, I know we've talked about, you've approved us to hire an instructional math coach moving forward. So the plan 2 for that would be to help eliminate some of those down the road. So we want our instructional coach, as well as our building principals, as well as myself, to be very well versed in iReady and or bridges. Obviously, we're recommending moving forward with iReady, but we want to be very well versed so that we would be able to do that to help eliminate some of those things. But I mean, up front, when the first, next year, definitely, we're going to probably want to have iReady folks come in to help continue to provide support. So year 3, year 4, year 5, we would back that off and use more of our instructional coach and in-house folks. So
When you prepared the budget, 24-25, you include the 243 or the 120?
We still have the 81 in there at this point.
Oh.
So, because at this point, we're just kind of coming down to the decision process at this stage. And there was some discussion too, Mr. Hamburger, of if you have more upfront costs in a given year, again, with a curriculum change, it isn't unusual that you potentially could use some of your fund balance to make that one-time purchase, but then continue to bake in the ongoing costs within your budget. So we had that discussion a little bit internally as well.
Okay.
yes, Dr. Royer.
So, you need, any decision, I know you're not planning on recommending for a board vote till April. Do you need any kind of decision in order for the in-service day on April 3rd? Would it help you to have an indication of the board whether they're good with this?
Yeah, if we could kind of have, if there could be an indication or a straw poll, I don't know how that kind of works, but definitely if there'd be a leaning towards your thinking, that could help us obviously to plan and prepare, moving forward. I know that, I think you had indicated, I know Dr. Holtzman, you had the conversation, I think any new core resource type thing really can't be officially approved until April, if I'm not mistaken.
The academic committee, when they met, I think Mr. Pence, you were here, Rachel, you were not here, Mrs. Zimmerman's here, I think, were you here? No, you're not.
missed it. Yeah.
We talked about, we did get the information from, Dr. DeShong, and, we were more than pleased with the diligence, that went into this. Again, this has been more than a decade in the making, of looking at an elementary math program. So the committee would recommend that we go with their recommendation of iReady. If we can kind of get head nods that you're okay with that, I'd like them to have the advantage of that extra in-service day.
And frankly, it would be good to know a number so that Eric could bake it into the budget, so we don't have to fool with fund balances.
Just one quick question. So moving forward with iReady, I don't need the exact number, but with your Minds on Math team, was it like an overwhelming majority wanted the iReady, or was it like, how close are we talking about in terms of that?
So I'll just say this, Mr. Smith, our meeting today, and our meeting today, I can't tell you actually, and I was speaking with, Mrs. McGuire, Ms. Preisler out in the parking lot before, we came into the meeting. I can't tell you how proud I honestly am, to worked with that team, and we're gonna continue to move forward, working together as a team. And our grade level coordinators today, if you could have been there and seen just the open honesty that people were able to have with one another, the dialogue that we were able to have. We had grade level sharing with other grade levels to share their thinking, their feelings. Are we looking at this from just a grade level perspective, or are we looking at this from a K-5 lens and perspective? And I know that we all pretty much felt and agreed that we're really a winner either way here with
Okay.
either one, and they do teach math, the program doesn't teach math. Their resource presents is two different approaches, but nonetheless, very strong conceptually, speaking mathematically. But when comes down to it, I told everybody, in advance, I said, I don't want to take a vote here at the end of this meeting. I basically want us to be able to, after we have the discourse and the conversation at the end of the meeting, that we're going to kind of pretty much know which way we're heading and going. So after we spent probably about 75 minutes or so, I tried to say nothing the whole meeting, but to say that moving forward, is it safe to say that iReady would be the hearing what I'm hearing, that iReady is the way we're going and moving forward, and that head nods around the room. So everybody knows that that there were a few people that still preferred Bridges. However, we also agreed too that regardless of how it went down, if the board went a different way or however it went, we were going to make whatever program work. We were going to take this on, and the bottom line, when it comes right down to it, is this. It's not an iReady, it's not a Bridges, it's not illustrative math, but it's the teachers that are in every single classroom around our district that is going to be the ones that are going to make the difference with this tool in their hands. So really, that's the bottom line. But I gave you the long story. The short story is, yes, it was pretty much.
Here's what I was looking for, is that there's buy-in from
Yeah.
the Minds on Math team.
Yes.
And so I think, from my perspective, there's buy-in from the Minds on Math team, there's buy-in from the academic committee. I even though I use math every day, I wouldn't call myself a math expert. So I think that's what I was looking for as my kind of encouragement to move forward in this process, that there's buy-in from the team and buy-in from the academic committee. So that's where that question came from.
Thank you, Mr. I appreciate that.
Another question, is there?
Mr. Marvin, I'm
did
sorry,
the-
Mr. Marvin.
In the iReady literature, does it mention anything about the amount of time, like if the program is implemented with Fidelity, like what is the expectation on the growth? How soon can we see growth?
Sure.
If the program is implemented with Fidelity, right?
Yes, and that was a big topic. If I could, before I answer that question, Mrs. McGuire, Mr. Preisler, you were at that meeting. Would you be in agreement with what I shared with Mr. Marvin? I just, so those are, they're vouching for you guys.
That's fine.
Not that they would need to, but what's that? So to answer your question, iReady has 120 lessons over the year. We did the math on that too. Bridges has 160, which you can knock off sort of 20. It's sort of a STEM, so it narrows down to 140. Also, both of them core delivery of the content is about an hour. With Bridges, you have something called Number Corner, which are asking for an additional 20 minutes, which sometimes is would be considered to be part of your calendar math or your community meeting in the morning. And it doesn't have to be back to back, but you're still looking really at 80 minutes for Bridges with 160 lessons, where iReady's 120 lessons at 60 minutes. So anytime or a lot of times, oftentimes, when you bring in anything new, a core resource or do a change or a big overhaul like that, often that first year there's an implementation dip. Not always, but sometimes there is an implementation dip where you might see, because folks getting used to the resource, learning the resource, it's a process, and that happens often. But then usually after that, you will see growth. So we did do some comparisons and studies from some districts around that have used it. Hanover uses it, Southwestern uses it. A school I actually used to teach at Juniata Valley, which is up in Huntington County, uses it. And then we went to Governor Mifflin also and used it. And it's hard to compare kind of apples to apples or apples to oranges, because every district is unique in their socioeconomic status, to compare, like a small district to like a state college, or Waynesboro, Harrisburg school, so you can't always gauge their growth scores on how well you're going to do. And I think we all acknowledge too that there's no magic wand that we're going to wave with any specific program. Again, it's how we're going to move forward with the fidelity, and we've agreed that moving forward we want to have coherence, from school to school. So if you are at Maury and you move to Summit View, you should be kind of like within a week of those lessons, from each other as you're moving forward. I'm not saying day to day, because there's variability in that, so. But yeah, a lot of the schools, I know that Southwestern did a program for the Curriculum Council through the IU, and their numbers and growth have been very strong. If you look on their PVAS growth, there's some deep blue scores in that school.
No, good
Kind of
question.
coming in here at the 11th hour, not really not knowing, trying to catch up to find all the background. So really, it's a reset, right? It's not like any of these programs you think we can be successful with.
Yeah, Mr. Penn.
We
So
just
I,
need a
it's,
reset,
so
like training reset type of thing.
yeah, so I think that just a quick history lesson from what I know of, right? So I think the district's been using everyday math for approximately 27 years. And I think as Dr. Royer mentioned, over the past 10 years, they've been looking at some different things and then try to do a reset with everyday math. Everyday math is kind of like one of those things where it's just been over the years, and we had COVID hit, and people kind of like tailored it to their, and so we've been really honing in on, again, fidelity, like Mr. Smith said, to a program, but just not that, but like the 8th mathematical practice, making sure we're having strong instructional practices in our math classrooms with our learners. Also, just our discourse and our vocabulary, having consistent vocabulary that we're strengthening and building that as we go. So like if you're teaching, 3rd grade and you're saying trading, and Dr. Royer saying carrying, that we're consistent with that terminology and using math conversation and vocabulary intentionally and on purpose. So really, it's just not about a program or a resource. It's really about looking at all of our mathematical practices, our discourse, our conversation, yes, a program, but also how we deliver that mathematics instruction. So.
Is there like a plan moving forward to like proactively measure the performance of whatever the new thing's going to be?
Yes. No, yeah, so yes, so the answer obviously would be yes. We want to, with the iReady, there is a diagnostic like I've shared, and there also is a path. So it has lots of different reports that we can pull. We're going to have to find out what specific reports really work for us and what's most meaningful for our specific grade levels moving forward. So we want to be monitoring that. We want to be progress monitoring that. There actually also is, and we've talked about this at the meeting today too, there actually is like a walkthrough checklist kind of thing that comes with iReady, and teachers are going to have it. And we shared a walkthrough form with our teachers this past year too, which they had a voice in saying. So when I come in or a teacher walks in any math classroom, these are the things that we should be seeing, and these are the things that we should be hearing when mathematics instruction is happening and going on. So, so yeah, I think, we look over the next year to 3, 4 years, we won't expect to see growth in our math scores and our instruction.
We have been using one system for decades. Currently have a group of students that have gone halfway through that system. When you add the new system, is there going to be a difficult transition? Or will the iReady mesh somehow with the everyday math that you've been teaching them now for the last 3
Yeah,
or 4 years?
that's an excellent question, Mr. Hamburger. And we've had those discussions too, right? Because it's like, okay, are we going to do it in kindergarten, then first grade, then second grade? And we're like, nah, we're gonna rip the Band-Aid off. We're gonna suck it up. We're gonna do it. We're gonna make it happen. Yeah, will there be will there be some discrepancies? Sure, there will be. But we're gonna move through that. In other districts I've been in and we've implemented a new math program, we did K-5, and yeah, there was some vocabulary because the third graders are using this vocabulary, the following year, we saw that it really did all catch up, so. And in that particular incident, we didn't experience an implementation yet, but again, that varies from school to school and district to district, so. A good question, thank you.
Mr. Hammer, we talked about that at the academic committee. One of the reasons for, another reason, I guess, for making that decision is that we do sometimes have teachers moving from grade level to grade level because of, dips in our enrollment. So, it's possible then if we did that, that a teacher would need to be teaching it the following year, but hadn't been trained. So that was one of the reasons.
Yeah, it makes sense to do it all. at
Yeah,
once.
and financially, I mean, this is just, it's pretty amazing that we can implement a brand new program with this kind of cost, by these savings that we're, going to have with, the sustaining of everyday math, the Acadians and the study island. But going back to Mr. Pence, what you said, one of the things this program will give us is, common assessments, and it'll give us really strong data across the board elementary wise. So the principals will have really accurate data to look at, comparing third grade to third grade to third grade across the district, which we do not have now. And one of the other strengths of the program is that it offers enrichment for those students that need enrichment and also remediation for those students that need remediation. So there's some really, strong, consistent things, in the program.
So when you talk about building assessments, quarterly or per semester, or how often are some of those assessments?
So, Mr. Smith, so the diagnostic piece that comes with iReady, it takes place 3 times a year. So it's fall, middle of the year, and end of the year. But that doesn't mean there are then throughout, from one bench or one diagnostic check to the next diagnostic check.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, you've got your formative assessment, then you have the quizzes that are a part of the program also that provides consistency and continuity, so.
Yeah, but because what happens with I think the way the testing system is, I guess the required testing in Pennsylvania, you were testing the spring, and so you get the results probably in the summer or something. So we kind of refer to that as autopsy data because you can't use
It's
it, right? It's gone. And so this data assessments that are happening throughout the school year, you can kind of, if you need to give a kid enrichment who is ahead of the game, you help them. And if those who need help, you can give them support as well in real time.
And the great thing about this particular one is that it is specific, it's all wrapped around that core resource, right? So Acadians it's a good tool, but as far as math goes, it wasn't tied into your core resource per se. So this diagnostic is tied in as well as the path, it's tied into that, so.
I don't think I caught that. So what we're currently using 3 different systems to do 3 different things with regards to math. Whereas now we're moving to one program which does those 3 things. Is that accurate?
Sure. So Acadians, it does math and does reading for us. We found at the elementary level that Acadians usually provides us better information for ELA, for reading than does the math piece. So I think it's around 15 to 17 that we would be able to not spend on Acadians because again, that would be part of the diagnostic piece with iReady. And then Study Island, we've been using it for reading and also math. And Study Island has diagnostics, but it also is kind of like a tutorial type thing also, and it moves around. It is testing you on like where we want you to be at the end of the year. So sometimes you have information at the beginning of the year, like, oh my goodness, kids did not real good. Well, because they haven't been taught these things yet, but it gives teachers information on where they kind of need a head or direct. And for the iReady piece, that'll do that with the specific math, the iReady classroom core piece. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, that was just for information
Thank you.
purposes.
Mr.
Thank you,
Stewart,
Dr. Deshawn.
Yes. Now, as chair of the academic committee, would you be willing to poll the board members to see if there's agreement to give Dr. Shang the go-ahead to go directions that we
Sure.
can use the in-service day?
Sure, yeah. I think we can do that.
That would also help Eric prepare the budget.
So anyone, not in support?
I'm okay. I trust their judgment.
Wouldn't say I'm not in support. I just don't know if I'm ready yet.
Need more information? Okay.
Just.
I'm ready, Mr. Pence. That's where it's at right there. I'm ready. I'm ready. You just said it subconsciously. You didn't know it, sir.
You fed him that punchline, you know.
Waiting for that.
So just, I guess, additional information, there was. What else? Well, just another, some more time then,
Yeah,
is there any
just-
information you need? From
Maybe. I don't know. I can.
touch base with?
Yeah, please
Okay.
feel free, honestly,
Yeah.
call me, reach out. We can set up a time to meet or chat and go over more. So I know you and I talked a little bit,
Yeah.
but yeah, certainly, yeah.
Okay, sounds good. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. And now we could move to first item of business, and that's personnel. Dr. Deshawn.
Hey, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate being here and Sharon. And so we have some personnel items to present to you tonight. The first item is the retirement of Ruth Howman. She has served 30 years in our school district, keeping our kiddos fueled up day to day so they can learn, you run out of gas on the road, you can't go anywhere. And she's helped keep our kids fed and fueled for 30 years here in the district. So we appreciate all that she's done and contribute to Waynesboro Area School District, and we wish her the best moving forward. And hopefully, unless she really, really loves it, hopefully wanted to do with food service stuff, maybe just be able to, do whatever, but we wish her the best. So we also have a resignation of David Swink. He's been with the wrestling program, I think, for a while, I understand, but we appreciate his service to the wrestling program. We also have 5 other resignations, and we want to thank those folks for their role that they fulfilled in the district. You'll also notice on the agenda there's a number of coaching, classroom monitor, extracurricular, and summer maintenance appointments that we're asking your approval for. And then we also have 2 leaves of request that we're asking you to approve. And then last but not least, we have 2 gentlemen sitting here this evening with us. The first one here, we would like to recommend Benjamin T. Wingert for a mathematics teacher / dean of students, kind of a hybrid position. We're asking for your approval for him. He would be coming from Fan and Metal. Mr. Wingert, you want to stand up and just say hi to everybody, or, he has a 10-minute speech, but just so you know, if you don't give a 10-minute speech, we'll be able to get out earlier. So it's up to you, whatever you. Hello. Thanks, Mr. Winger. Appreciate it. I'll tell you this too, and I think everybody on the team on the list here can attest to this. We interviewed, we posted and interviewed a lot of candidates for the assistant principal position. And I want to thank all those folks who did apply, and we can safely say, and all of us have agreed to this, like, there were no candidates that were like, oh, wow. We were very grateful that we had a lot of quality candidates for the position. But there was one that kind of just really rose to the top for us. and he's here with us also tonight. I believe he is a Waynesboro native and actually taught in the district at one point in time. And he is now returning to us, and we're recommending Derek M. Knoll for the assistant principal at Washes. So, Mr. Knoll?
I appreciate it. Be on the also board. Being from Waynesboro, where actually my wife is a special ed teacher. So enjoying my time here as a student. Difficult decision to leave a couple of years ago, but really sought out an habit. Always being from Wayne, I thought it was a good idea to get outside my comfort zone. Grown a ton personally and professionally, and I'm just
Yeah, we had two of them, Mr. Smith, go like 3 rounds, and again, it was tough, but we appreciate them both. We appreciate all the candidates again, but these are the recommendations to the board, so.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the personnel as listed.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Welcome aboard.
thank you.
Yep.
Congratulations, Mr. Winger, Mr. Knoll, and happy retirement to Ms. Hellman. Trying to get there myself. All right. Yeah, did you hear that? I didn't- Okay, all right, moved down to Franklin Learning Center 2024-25 general operating budget. Dr. Host.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So this is the Franklin Learning Center itself. This is the facility up at Loop Road. If you remember, not too long ago, we approved the general operating budget for the IU itself. But we actually, as school districts here in Franklin County, own the facility up there. So these are the costs associated really just with kind of operating the building itself. It's not the actual programs for the most part, but this is operating the building. So everything from utilities to maintenance, we have building secretaries, nurses in the buildings, things of that nature. All of those costs associated. They were able to actually keep their per student per day costs the same for us. Those who are in here in the county, we do charge 2 different rates, in county and out of county, because we do have participation from outside the county. We have about 14 students on a regular basis up there that can change up and down, and it's not the same students, obviously, in some cases. But so our share of this is about $115,000 in that ballpark. Once you look at it, and again, it can fluctuate based on need and based on enrollment. So we're asking for your approval. The districts, of course, approve this each year.
Okay. All right, any questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You.
Thank you.
Say about the pool. The Learning Center has a swimming pool. And it has been closed since COVID. And there's, what'd she say, every day a parent asks
When it's
the
gonna
pool-
open. Yeah.
So Rachel and I went and toured the pool. There are a few.
We did not swim.
No, there's no water in it. There's no water in it.
We didn't pour it like that.
But I think from being closed, it caused some issues, aisles coming up. But then we asked her how much. That was highlight of the kid. So in the future, we might know. That may be something. Help kick in the repair, but we both felt that. Yeah. Oh, and it's so cool in there, they have all these things floating from the sea. You could tell it was a welcoming room that,
Mhm.
that they just. Socialization. So.
Wow.
Unless we find a benefactor that.
Did I hear you right? We have 14 students there.
I think that's what I saw in the latest enrollment when they put the budget together.
Okay, so we're paying $1.3 million for 14 students.
That's the total budget. I'm sorry. Our share of it is about 115,000,
Oh, that's
somewhere in that ballpark.
That's
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, it's a great question.
I
It's-
should think send them to college for that.
Yes, if it was $100,000 per student, that would be a different conversation. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back. So the motion is to approve Let me see, I'll make sure. Right. Okay, so we did. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
All right, and now we move to the agreement with CSIU for 24-25 school year.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So this is our software that we use for both payroll and for our financial side. We use several different modules. You'll notice that they're checked off there on their sheet. Over the years, we actually have reduced modules on here. So we used to use them for tax billing, tax data, inventory purchasing, a couple other items out there. And over the years, we've kind of taken those out because we could find a different way to do it, something that potentially costs less or a different mechanism to track it. So, so there's been savings over the years. It's about, when you add everything up, it's about $52,000 a year, unfortunately. But that is the cost for the software for both financial and for our human resources.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the agreement with CISU for 24-25. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any questions for Dr. Holzman? Okay,
How often is that reviewed? Like, how often do you like check out other plans? Like,
We haven't done it
Sure.
recently at all, sir. It's just,
Not
just
worth
simply
it.
because it's a monumental change to get everything flipped over. It's one of those 6 month to a year type work. I would say, you know, I can't give you the current numbers. Probably at one point, half the school districts in the Commonwealth use this system. It's actually run by Central Susquehanna Intermediate Unit. So it's an intermediate unit that created this, but we have not looked at a major change. We did change with them from a more of a rudimentary system to a web-based system several years ago, which has helped. It's certainly has made it much more convenient, but yeah, the switches and changes. Again, you probably could find potentially somebody that costs less, certainly, and then vice versa, we could certainly find ones that cost more, but it would be, certainly any change would be very comprehensive across the district from the business side and the HR side.
any other questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
And I guess we're going back to you, Dr. Holzman, for bus drivers.
Yes, sir. We have a couple drivers for the district, which we approve as well. And we do that for our insurance purposes and board policy. And then we also have one driver for Heck Myers. And again, they've met the background checks and criteria.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the bus drivers as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
If you can find them, hire them.
I wouldn't want
I wouldn't want to drive.
to.
Okay. And next, second reading of policies 217 and 626.1. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so this will be asking tonight for the approval of 626.1 travel reimbursement federal programs, which we discussed at the last meeting, and the second reading of policy 217 graduation requirements, changing the graduation requirements based on going to the block. And the document is also included here that gives the progression of the graduation requirements year by year until we're totally through with freshmen that have started on the block this year. So again, a big thanks to the high school staff and admin for putting this together. It's a complicated document, to say the least, since every class has different graduation requirements, I guess, for the next 3 years, correct, Diane?
Mhm.
So again, asking for approval for second reading of these policies.
Okay, so the motion is to approve policies 217 and 626.1.
Second.
Any questions for Dr. Royer? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Move to financial business. Do you want to loop those together?
With your permission or
Okay,
your preference?
thank you.
So, yes, sir. So we have financial business. We have JP Harris exonerations. These are old exonerations per capita or occupation tax bills going back, as you can see, all the way through 2015. We have the treasurer's report, which is just an update of where our accounts are. And then we have the purchase orders and bills for payment. That's for the general fund as well as the cafeteria fund. And then their requisitions are in there as well.
Okay, so the motion is to approve financial businesses one, 2, and 3.
Second.
Okay, any questions, concerns? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we move to Clayton Cabinet comments. Any comments? Clayton Cabinet?
I just,
Oldham?
again, a quick one with Ms. Hellman retiring. I mean, she's, she has been, certainly a cornerstone of that program, of a very successful, very beneficial food service program for a long time. If you remember, we were talking, I think, not too long ago at a previous board meeting about how we had an excellent administrative review that happens every 5 years from the state. Extremely comprehensive. And again, she knew that, she was retiring this year. And again, that was exemplary. So this was certainly somebody who really does care about the district and care about the performance of the program, regardless of whether she's retiring or not in the short term. So we will certainly miss her.
Anyone else? Dr. Dishon?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to add too, Mr. Smith, and I forgot to mention this. I encourage you to go to edreports.gov, and on edreports.gov, it's one of the sites we research too. iReady is one of the only mathematics programs that actually have received perfect scores also. Focus and coherence, rigor in mathematical practices, and usability. So if you check out edreports.gov, you can look at all the math programs that are kind of out there right now. So just might be just worth taking a look at, Mr. Pence, or anybody who wants to take a look at that. But the first time I think a mathematics program actually got like perfect scores in those areas. So I again want to thank our math team and congratulations to Ken, Mr. Noel, Mr. Wingert. And I also want to just give a shout out to, I was able to be a guest at the Rotary today. Was able to go in lieu of Mrs. Everhart. She's out today, but Mrs. Blunt presented to the Rotary today, and she did a fantastic job on the Hooverville connection that they do over at Hooverville in the evenings through like kind of just a home school connection, doing a lot of community type events, doing one book, one school type activities. They had a financial person come in and do something for parents and families. They had a game night for families and kids and parents and so forth, and just a number of other activities. And Dr. Holtzman was there too, and she did a really nice job. And I just want to send a kudos out to her and also Hooverville for being able to do that. And I know all of our schools do different things like that, but just highlighting that today because it just happened today and presented at the Rotary. So thanks.
You. And board comments. Any of our board members have any comments this evening?
I had the opportunity to go to kindergarten registration and help out. So I just want to thank all of the admin and Erica who put that together and did a very good job. I know the kindergartners that I saw looked excited, a few that looked a little afraid. But I think it's going to be a good class coming in.
My son was on the other end of that spectrum being registered, and again, a special person that wants to be a teacher, and I think there's a very special person that wants to be a kindergarten teacher. And so I think he was counted in the nervous at the beginning, but the kindergarten teacher who did his evaluation was able to make him comfortable where I don't even know what she said, but she said something and it was like, bye mom, I'm going with this kindergarten teacher to do some learning. So I think it's a great testament to the teachers that we have in our district, who are willing to put time and effort into kindergarten, something as simple as kindergarten registration, and helping those incoming students and their parents feel comfortable with this transition. So.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. Dr.
Yes, I just wanted to thank Dr. Sternerheim and Dr. DeShong and Dr. McCallum for putting together a great interview team for our two new candidates. We've had teachers on the past, but not, I don't think, such an extensive list. I believe there was 6 teachers on the panel. I ran into one of the support staff last night at Martin's, and the first thing she told me was how thrilled she was to be asked to be part of an interview team. And I do not believe we've included support staff in the past, so I think that's kudos to all of them for including those people. I also wanted to mention that next week, Eve Phillips and Brenner McElwain are headed to national swimmings in North Carolina.
Oh, that's right.
They have to have a qualifying time, and this will be students from all over the country they'll be competing against. Brenner is competing in the 50 free. That's Eric McElwain's son, by the way. And Eve is competing in the 50 free, the 100 free, and the 100 fly. So pretty impressive to qualify for a national event.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I think next Friday night at 7 o'clock, the Drumline and the Guard, Friday, April 5th, they're gonna perform their shows for the public if you want to go see them and support them.
He's shaking his head, yes.
Somebody, okay. I
He's
saw
at the
it.
Guard.
Yeah, okay. Free to get in and watch them do their shows Friday night, and then their championships are that weekend. So. What?
Championships is the next day.
The next day, okay.
The science fair is the science fair next Friday? Oh, April 5th, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Anyone else? All right, yeah. Okay. And I would like to thank the students from Ms. Henderson's civics class for attending tonight's meeting. Come back. At the beginning of the meeting, you noticed that there is a public comment section. If you have issues that you'd like to present to the board or everyone here to hear, please take advantage of that opportunity. We are here to listen to you, so come back, please. Okay, so that's it for tonight's meeting. Can we
Need your
get,
paper sign. Come have one of us sign it before you leave.
right? So we'll make a move.
We
Yep.
do want to thank Mr. Marvin too for kind of bringing a Cobra Kai feel to the meeting tonight.
I was trying to reminisce back to my high school days. I don't know, I'm quite there yet.
Yeah, thank you for that. Motion to adjourn. We have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, folks.